everyone, it's me, Krista. Welcome back to my channel. If you've been here before, if not, welcome for the very first time to my little art corner here on YouTube. Today we are going to be painting a watercolor forest. The paper I am using is some Strathmore watercolor paper 400 series in 5.5 by 8.5 inches. And I'm playing around more with some Van Gogh watercolors, and I will be pulling in quite a few different brushes and eventually a Winsor marker. A full list of supplies will be in that description box down below. For the painting itself, at this point I obviously already have the sketch in. I just did that very lightly and loosely using a mechanical pencil. Then I started very loosely putting in the sky and the grass. For the sky I used cerulean blue. And for the grass, I pulled in sap green, viridian, some burnt sienna, some madder lake deep, and a tiny bit of ultramarine deep. Then I start blocking in the leaves using permanent lemon yellow, madder lake deep, little bit of ultramarine, viridian, sap green, and a touch of burnt sienna. And for the base of what the trunk and branches are going to be, that is just burnt sienna mixed with ultramarine deep. At the beginning here, I'm just trying to get some of the basic colors thrown in very loosely, lots of water, bigger brushes, and as I go, the brushes will continually get smaller. And less water will be used in each layer. I intentionally try not to get caught up in the details too early. It's better just to get some basic idea of color in and then tighten it up as you go. I've been enjoying playing around with these watercolors quite a bit, especially doing kind of nature scenes and landscapes. And as a subject matter I don't do very often and haven't historically done it very much. But it's been a nice change of pace. It's been very calming just to play around with the colors, let them flow into each other, and not be too uptight about anything and how it looks. For the shadows in the leaves of the trees, I am pulling in some Madder Lake Deep, mixing it in with the sap green and pulling in just a hair of ultramarine deep. The further along I go, there's gonna be a lot of different colors thrown in, mixed together, used for different areas of shading. The only area that I'm gonna have just a single color going on in a wash is gonna be that sky area. And I try to leave that white of the paper as white as possible. And for this painting, I'm using black very minimally. I think I mix it in for a couple shadows, but I don't use it very often. I also use the white very minimally from this watercolor palette. I'm mostly allowing the colors to just play with each other, bounce off each other, and just seeing how they interact on the page without utilizing black or white too much to where it messes with that interaction between the other colors. And using color like this can have some ugly results, but practice makes perfect. You gotta take some risks and play around and not be afraid to mess up in order to get to a good place. The nice thing about watercolor is if you don't like how something's looking, if it's still damp, you can wipe it up with a paper towel. And if it's dry, you can always layer over it and just kind of see where it goes from there. For the leaves, I'm using a lot of stippling, as you can tell, just doing little dots with a smaller brush. And it's moving the camera a little bit, sorry about that. My camera's on an overhanging mount that attaches to the desk, so anytime there's furious movement, it does move the camera. Once again, I apologize. There was a section with this where I used the brush that specifically came with this Van Gogh watercolor set. The head of it did fall off in the water cup and I didn't see where it landed. I thought it was on the floor and I looked around for it for a while and ended up pulling in a different brush to keep on trucking and keep on moving. When I emptied out the cup, I found the part with the bristles. At least it was in there and one of the cats didn't find it and drag it off. Back to the painting itself, I'm insinuating some bright red flowers and other spots in this painting by using the permanent light red, and I'm also pulling in a little bit of Azo yellow medium just to pull in more color. Don't want the whole thing to just be green and blue, wanted to have some nice warm spots in there too. I also used a heck of a lot of that permanent lemon yellow to help brighten up certain areas of the grass and the trees without pulling in white. I am running through that lemon yellow really quickly. I must really enjoy that color and how it works with other ones. In paintings like this, I try to give a little bit of dry time in between. I'll work on one area and then jump to another one and then go back to it later. Sometimes it's not quite enough time to do so. When I was painting this, it was really humid and raining quite a bit, and that always slows down the dry time. I do end up pulling in a handy dandy hairdryer a couple times just to help the process along. You don't want to do this if the watercolor is super wet, because it can move it along the page and create streaks, unless that's what you're going for at that moment in time. It is fun using that hairdryer and making it go every which way when that's the look you want. It's not the aesthetic I was going for with this one. I do gently touch the painting after using the hairdryer to ensure that the spots I want to work on are indeed dry enough to work again. And at this point in the painting, I do want some more clearly defined little lines and dots in that grassy area, so it needs to be dry first for that to work out. If it's still wet, it'll just bleed into what I've got going on already. The further along I get into this painting, the less water I am using by just putting the brush in water and then pulling it in. At the beginning, I use a lot of water on my brush and just let it soak up into that watercolor. At this point, where I'm trying to get these smaller, more delicate details in there, I spritz the watercolor pans by just using a regular little water bottle sprayer. This allows there to be enough water in there so they're wet and they'll go on the paper, but not too much to where you can't get some definition going on. And at this point, like I said, I'm pulling in more definition and I'm deepening up certain areas and lightening up some more, just jumping back and forth until it starts looking the way I want it to look. I'm just gradually layering and adjusting as I go, and pulling in that hairdryer when I need it to be dry so I can layer some more. How many layers are in this painting? I don't know. I don't keep track of that. I just know that I do it a lot. At this point, I start pulling in some more of that permanent light red into some other areas of the painting. I didn't want it to just be on one spot of that paper. I wanted it to flow throughout the painting. I'm also deepening up some of the tree trunk and branches areas, once again by mixing burnt sienna with ultramarine deep. It makes a nice deep brown color. And I'm adding a little leafless tree in the middle here. If you're ever unsure about how your colors have mixed, you can always test them out on a piece of scrap paper on the side before putting it on your final project. And I always have a piece of paper towel set aside just so I can wipe off my brushes in between or dab off any excess water I've got going on. I do layer over the trunks and branches a couple times to help deepen them up even more. I want them to be nice and dark so they stand out strong against the other stuff I've got going on. And when those branches are pretty dry, I start pulling in some of the greens and yellows over them to show some leaves kind of crossing over. It makes them look more attached to the tree this way, otherwise it seems more like it's floating on top of the trunks and branches. I also pull some of that permanent red light into the trunks of the trees just to pull even more red into other areas of the painting. And I keep stippling into the leaves, and I keep pulling in some small lines into the grass to keep adding more and more texture gradually. Still darkening up some areas to push them back and lightening up others to pull them forward. Throughout the painting, I've been pulling in a bunch of different colors. Something that looks green isn't just green. It'll reflect a bunch of the other colors around it. And pulling in all of these different colors and moving them around the page makes the painting feel more vibrant, more alive. Whereas if I just had used black and white mixed in with the green, it would look flat compared to this. And I know when I think of being outside and looking at nature, I feel happiest when the colors are bright and beautiful, when it's that wonderful sunny day and you can just see all of the colors. And I guess I subconsciously try to capture that joy of just being outside on a beautiful sunny day. I've noticed when playing around with these paintings that a lot of landscapes are mostly insinuation. Like, there are little red dots to kind of show that there are flowers there, but they don't necessarily look like flowers. You do little stripes for blades of grass and little dots for the leaves too. None of it's super detailed, but it leaves the impression of looking at an outdoor scene. Now back to the painting. When these layers that I'm currently working on are all dry, I did decide that the trunks and branches of the trees looked a little bit too translucent. I wanted them to be more opaque, so I do pull in another item. I wanted to stay in the watercolor realm, so I pull in a Winsor & Newton watercolor marker in the color Sepia. And I just apply it straight out of the marker. I don't end up mixing it with any water. I just wanted something really stark and opaque in contrast to everything else I have going on. And for most of it, I ended up using the smaller tip on the marker. I do pull in the brush nib for certain areas. I also use this to add some deeper shadows and add a little bit more definition to some of the darkest areas of the painting. Overall, I had a lot of fun doing this project. It was nice kind of coming out of my comfort zone a little bit by playing around with the subject matter that I don't normally do, and playing around with some new watercolors a little bit more. I used to hate using watercolor. I hated it. I thought it was awful, but the more I play around with it and use different brands of watercolor, the more I end up actually enjoying it. It's just like anything else, the more practice you get in using something, the better you get at it, and sometimes the more enjoyable that experience becomes. But this project, and therefore this video, is almost finished. If you liked this video, please hit that like button. If you have any comments, questions, feelings, or concerns, or if you have any feelings about using watercolors, let me know in that comment section down below. I look forward to hearing from you. If you want to see more videos like this, please feel free to subscribe. As always, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day or night to watch this video, listen to me ramble. I greatly appreciate it. I look forward to hearing from you guys soon, and you will definitely be hearing from me soon. Bye, everybody!